I've worked as a seasonal ranger in Shenandoah National Park for years, long enough that the forest feels familiar, predictable, safe in a way only routine can make it feel. I know the sound of deer moving through brush. I know how wind travels through the ridges at dusk. I know when silence means nothing and when it means something is wrong. That night, the silence felt wrong. I was hiking back along a lesser-used stretch near Big Meadows, just past sunset. The trail was technically closed beyond a pair of old boundary markers, stone slabs half swallowed by moss and leaf. I stopped walking. It didn't. I remember thinking, don't panic, don't imagine things, but my body didn't listen. My hands went cold, my heartbeat felt loud enough to echo off the trunks. I could feel it watching me, not with eyes, but with awareness, like standing too close to a drop you can't see the bottom of. When I shifted my weight, it shifted too, not stepping, sliding. I didn't file a report that night. I told myself it was exhaustion, low light, stress. But the next morning, over burnt coffee in the ranger station, I overheard two senior rangers talking in low voices. They weren't joking. They weren't dramatic. They were comparing locations. One of them, Lucas, noticed my face and asked me straight out, "You crossed the old markers last night, didn't you?" I nodded. He sighed, like how he saw a tall silhouette standing between two boundary stones. He said the worst part wasn't seeing it. It was knowing, he told me. Knowing it was aware of me before I was aware of it. He filed an official report. It went nowhere, labeled environmental stress response. But after that, I started looking at maps differently after that. Not the tourist ones, the internal overlays, old trail systems, decommissioned paths, boundary lines drawn decades ago by people who probably felt the same unease and never wrote it down. Every reported sighting clustered in the same zones, where maintained trails ended and deep forest took over, where signage stopped, where radios glitched, where people said they felt watched before they saw anything. I sketched what I saw once, late at night. Long limbs, narrow torso, no features. When I finished, I realized my hand was shaking. Other sketches from the quiet valleys of the Appalachians, I was transferred across the continent to Olympic National Park. I remember thinking I'd seen every kind of forest there was to see. I was wrong. Olympic doesn't feel like wilderness. It feels like something ancient that never agreed to let us in. I'd only been stationed there a few months when this happened. The forest there is dense in a way that makes distance hard to judge. Sound doesn't travel right. Trees rise so close together that daylight barely reaches the ground, and everything is covered in moss. It feels alive, but not welcoming. That night, I was part of a routine patrol near a remote valley far from any marked trail. I didn't turn right away. Rangers are trained not to panic, not to react, but the air changed. The smell hit next, wet fur and soil with something sour layered underneath. It reminded me of old leaves left too long in the rain. My chest tightened, not from fear at first, but from instinct. Then a tree ahead of me shifted. Not snapped, not falling, bent. Branches groaned under pressure, and I realized whatever was holding onto it was tall, taller than any black bear I'd seen standing. My light caught part of a shape through the ferns, broad shoulders, a thick torso, and arms that hung too. Then came the knocking. 3 solid hits against a tree trunk somewhere behind it. A pause. 2 more. The sound carried too clearly, too deliberately. I remember thinking it felt like communication, not with me, but about me. A rock landed a few feet away from my boot, not thrown hard, placed with intention. That's when the feeling settled in fully. I wasn't prey. Then, without warning, it stepped back into the forest, not crashing through brush, not leaving noise. It used the terrain like it belonged to it. In seconds, it was gone. No sound, no retreat, just absence. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to my own breathing, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. When I returned to base, I logged the encounter as Olympic is massive, rugged. There are places out there no one monitors, no cameras reach, no trails cut through. The rainforest swallows evidence fast. Tracks vanish. Sounds get lost. If something large and intelligent wanted to remain hidden, it wouldn't have to work very hard. I still patrol Olympic, but I avoid certain valleys now. Because the forest didn't feel surprised that night. It felt like it had always known something lived there. And it felt like it was letting me leave. I've done enough solo patrols to know the difference between being alone and being alone but watched. Most nights, the forest feels indifferent. It doesn't care if you're there or not. That's the comfort of it. But every once in a while, usually in the most remote sectors, that indifference disappears. This was one of those nights. I'd been assigned a solo patrol in a stretch of wilderness few people ever see. No campsites, no trails anyone bothers to maintain, just old forest, thick undergrowth, and terrain rough enough to discourage curiosity. Locals avoided the area. Not loudly, not dramatically. They just didn't go there. They had stories, though. I used to brush them off. Sasquatch, Rougarou, names passed down like warnings wrapped in folklore. Things people tell themselves to explain fear. That's what I believed. Right up until the forest started paying attention to me. It began with the feeling. That quiet tightening in the chest. Like someone standing too close behind you without breathing. I stopped walking and listened. The forest didn't settle the way it usually does. No birds returning to branches, no insects resuming their rhythm. Just a hollow stillness that pressed in from every direction. I told myself to keep moving. That's when I noticed the movement. Not ahead of me, not behind, to the side. Just at the edge of my vision, something shifting between trees. Too smooth for wind, too deliberate to be nothing. Every time I turned my head, there was nothing there. But when I looked forward again, the sense of motion returned. Like whatever it was understood how human eyes work. The temperature dropped next. Not gradually, not naturally. One step, normal night air. The next, cold, sharp and sudden, like walking into shade that doesn't belong. My breath fogged faintly. I checked my watch.
No weather change, no reason for it. The cold felt localized, like pockets in the forest where warmth simply refused to exist. I remembered stories then. Hunters talking about cold zones that followed them. Elders warning that some things announced themselves not with sound, but with absence. Absence of warmth. Absence of comfort. I laughed under my breath, more to convince myself than anything else. That's when I smelled it. Damp earth, rotting leaves, something old layered underneath. A smell that didn't drift, it lingered, like it was part of the ground itself. I slowed my pace, every sense stretched tight, heart thudding harder with each step.
I felt watched. Not generally, not vaguely, specifically. The sensation had direction, focus. Wherever I turned, the pressure followed, adjusting, staying just out of reach. I'd experienced wildlife encounters before, bears, cougars, but this wasn't predatory energy. It wasn't hunger. It was attention. Then the forest shifted. Branches creaked without wind. Leaves rustled where nothing passed through them. Once, just once, I caught a glimpse of something upright between two trees. Not clear, not detailed, just wrong. Taller than it should have been. Too still. When I focused, it was gone. My pulse spiked. Panic flashed hot and fast, cutting through training and logic. I stood frozen, listening. That's when something exhaled. Close. Not loud, not aggressive. Controlled. I spun, flashlight sweeping the darkness. The beam caught tree trunks, fog, nothing else. But I knew, absolutely knew that something had been there a second before, close enough that if I'd reached out, I might have touched it. Every instinct screamed at once. Leave. Now. I backed away at first, slow, deliberate, trying not to trigger whatever rules this place followed. My foot slipped on wet ground, and the sound, small as it was, felt impossibly loud. In response, something moved fast to my left, too fast. I didn't see it clearly, just a distortion, like the forest itself had stepped aside. That broke me. I turned and ran. Branches tore at my sleeves, roots caught my boots. I didn't care. I didn't look back. I could feel it pacing me. Not chasing, not closing the distance, just keeping up, letting me know it could. When I finally crossed into a more familiar sector, the pressure lifted all at once. The cold vanished. Sounds rushed back in like breath after being underwater too long. I stumbled to a stop, gasping, shaking, heart hammering so hard it hurt. I didn't file a report. There was nothing to write that wouldn't sound like superstition. But I started listening differently after that, to locals, to other rangers, to the pauses in their stories where they didn't finish sentences. Maybe these things are just old wives' tales. Or maybe folklore is what happens when something real keeps brushing up against human lives, just enough to be remembered, but never enough to be proven. All I know is this: some wilderness isn't empty. It's ancient, and sometimes when you walk alone through it, you're not being hunted, you're being reminded.